All right, here we go. Brand new Flyers Daily for the 5th of November, 2024. It is Election Day, so I hope everybody that is able to gets out and makes your voice heard and get your votes in. Flyers Daily, as always, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. How about an election night matchup tonight in Carolina as the Flyers visit the Canes for the first time this season? It's game one of a three-game road trip that'll see the Flyers tonight in Carolina, coming up on Thursday in Tampa at 7:30 to take on the Steven Stamkos-less Tampa Bay Lightning, and then Saturday at 6 o'clock against the Florida Panthers, the reigning Stanley Cup champions. We'll wrap up the three-game trip, but as for tonight, it's Carolina, and through 10 games played, Carolina once again off to a good start. I thought maybe this Carolina team would take a step back. They're off to a great start. 8-2 on the season so far. 16 points, sitting in the second spot of the Metropolitan Division, plus 16 in goal differential. Ho-hum, they've won 6 straight games. Flyers come in the bottom spot in the division. Who have they beaten in the 6 straight? How about that? Well, really, they've won 8 of their last 9. But they beat New Jersey 4-2, Pittsburgh on the road 4-1, lost to St. Louis on the road 4-3, then beat Edmonton on the road in overtime. This is a West Coast trip. This is a great West Coast trip for them, by the way. They beat Edmonton 3-2 in overtime, Calgary 4-2, then they beat Seattle 4-1, and then they beat Vancouver 4-3 in overtime. That's pretty much the same trip the Flyers took to start the season. Carolina got home with a much better record. Boston back home, they get a win there, 8-2, and then they beat Washington in their last game, 4-2. So tonight is the first of a few matchups between the Flyers and the Canes. Who's leading the way from a statistical standpoint with the Canes? Well, it's a guy that everybody said was going to be moved in the offseason, Martin Necas. He's got 6 goals, 12 assists, 18 points in 10 games played. What a start for him. Unreal. 2 power play goals, 6 power play assists. He's probably going to come down these numbers a little bit. His shooting percentage close to 29% right now. So everything's going in for him. Svechnikov has got 11 points in 10 games, 5 goals, 6 assists. And our former Flyers defenseman, Shane Gostisbehere, in 10 games has got 9 points. He's got 4 goals and 5 assists, 3 goals on the power play. Sebastian Aho also with 9 points. Kotkaniemi with 8. Jarvis with 8. Look at this team. They spread it around. Then you got Orlov with 6. Roslovic with 6. A couple of players with 5, including Blake and Robinson. They really spread their scoring around. That's probably why they're off to the start that they're off to. In Carolina once again. They're not one of those teams with a, just massive superstar. They got some really good players when you look at Aho. Maybe Svechnikov goes to that level. In goal, they have some really good, competent goaltending with Pyotr Kochetkov and Frederik Andersen, who I believe is out hurt right now. But Kochetkov on the season's got a record of 5-1, 2.51 goals against average, and not a really great save percentage, .893. Anderson in his 4 games got a .941 save percentage and a .149 goals against average. Pretty incredible numbers. But Carolina off to a very good start this season once again, right at the top of the division. And if the Flyers are going to get up there and start battling these teams, the time is now. We talked about last week. Last week was a decent week for the Flyers. It wasn't a step backwards. Was it a step forward? Maybe a little bit. You look at the calendar week last week from Saturday to Saturday. They beat Minnesota at home 7-5. They lost to Montreal on Sunday 4-3. Then won back-to-back games for the first time this season, beating Boston on the road and then St. Louis at home, and then lost, obviously, to Boston on Saturday. So a little step forward. This week going to be difficult, though. You're on the road for 3 in Carolina, Tampa, and Florida against 3 very good teams. But you got to play these teams, and you got to come away with points. The Flyers were really good against teams like this last year, where they went into Florida twice and had 2-1 wins. And they beat Carolina on the road last year. They played well against Tampa. Tampa cleaned their clock, I think, one time, but overall, the Flyers were able to get it done against top teams. That's why they had the record they had, is because they were able to compete with those top teams in the NHL. Their problem at the end was that they couldn't compete with the bottom teams, the Columbus, the Montreal down the stretch. That's what killed them and sank them on the season. Carolina comes into this game also tonight. When you look at the goals allowed per games played stat in the NHL, they give up the second fewest amount of goals What a combination, though. They give up the second fewest amount of goals, but they score a decent amount of goals. And that's really the combination. If you're looking for a team that you think can do some damage and be a good playoff team, the number you want more than the goals for games played number or goals against games played, you want the lower goals against game played number. That's more of a harbinger. But like I said, they get the second fewest goals and they score the fifth most goals. We'll see how that balances out over the season. Flyers right now, when it comes to goals allowed per games played, they're giving up the fifth most amount of goals per games played at 3.67, and the issue for them is they're only scoring 2.5 goals per game. That's a major, major problem for this team. When you look at that, they're 29th in scoring in the NHL. And this is something I want to discuss in this episode. Going into this season, if we wanted this to be a step forward, there were certain parameters that had to be met for this team to move forward. And while we're a dozen games in right now, I'm not fully pressing a panic button at this point. But if I had to kind of put where I think this team is in a word or a phrase, for me, it would be very concerned about where they are right now and where they're going. And it's not just because of the record. 4-7-1, not a great record. -13 in goal differential. It's more from what we see with the eyes and the offensive end of the ice. They've been much better defensively of late, but the offensive end of the ice is really concerning. And that's why I'm pretty concerned with where they are through a dozen games this season. Is there time? Yeah, there's 70 games left. So let's not get crazy. But one of the things that I talked about before the season started was I thought that they would be a team that scores more goals than they did last year. But my concern was, would they be a team that would give up more goals than they gave up last year? And so far, from an offensive expectation point of view, they haven't even come close to being where they need to be. Now, why is that? Well, we can talk about the tactical reasons why that is. When you look at how they attack in the offensive zone, they don't get to the middle. They don't create high-danger scoring chances. They're not a team that's getting out in transition. And they're a team that's not creating second-chance possessions in the offensive zone. I know John Tortorella spoke yesterday and talked about the lack of pinches down the wall for the D and the lack of third-man high support in the zone. Those two things go hand in hand. If a D comes pinching down the wall, then the third man high in the offensive zone will swing back and cover that defensive position. They got to read that. There's just been very few of instances where they get into the zone, create a forecheck, create a turnover, get possession, and then maybe even if they lose possession, find a way to crash down the wall, turn it back over, and keep the offensive zone time. Tort said that they've gotten better at defending because they're doing it so darn much. They're getting tons of practice defending because they're defending too much. But why are they not scoring offensively? Now, I know that one thing that I see a lot of is people pointing at individual players because of their lack of production. And while, yeah, that's an issue. It's a big issue when Owen Tippett's got one goal so far through a dozen games. When you look at guys that you're counting on for goals in offense, and Morgan Frost doesn't have a goal yet this season. Ryan Poehling, he's a fourth-line guy, but he doesn't have a goal yet. Forster's got two. We'll kind of let him slide, I guess, a little bit at this point. Farabee's got two. One of them's an empty netter. Sean Couturier's got three, but they all came in one game. So when you look at it, I can look at those individual players and point the finger and say they need to score more. They do, but the reason they're not scoring is because of the lack of the way they're attacking in the offensive zone. I think that all of those players, I think Farabee, he scored 20 goals in this league in 55 games. Tippett's a guy that absolutely should score 30. When you look at Tyson Forster, he should be 24 to 26 goals this season. All of those guys should be scoring more goals. Morgan Frost, if they can get to the middle of the ice in the offensive zone, they're just not getting there. They're not cutting to the middle of the ice and creating traffic in the middle of the ice. I don't think this sport is that complicated when you look at how goals are scored and where they're scored from. You have to get to the area where goals are scored from or shots are taken as high danger chances. And sometimes those shots don't go in, but they create a mess and they get a team that's defending running around. And that's when you create more high danger chances. That's cyclical. This team does not have that cyclical offense that presses a team, gets them running around, and creates more high danger chances as a result of the one high danger chance. What you want to do when you get a team defending is you want to get them chasing. So you have the advantage because you have the advantage of possession and dictating the terms. The other team is reacting. Flyers have not done nearly a good enough job with that part. Now, can they fix that? Sure. How do you fix that? It's not just something you go, okay, we're going to do this in practice and it's going to fix that. I don't think it works like that. But it is a situation you got to get guys to buy in. And I don't know that it's a confidence issue where everybody kind of goes cold at the same time when you're not getting to the middle of the ice. To me, it's an issue where there's got to be a will to go there and an understanding. This isn't about working on things in practice. This, to me, is about the team seeing the way to defend is to defend the middle of the ice, so therefore we should attack the middle of the ice at the other end. Because we know that we have to do everything we can to protect the middle in our own end because it's dangerous and it's consequential. So when we go the other way, why don't we go there to make it dangerous and consequential on the opposition? I don't know. The prediction I had that I thought this team would score more, and the question was, would they give up more or less? I don't know. I don't know that they'll score more because through 12 games, I just haven't seen it. I was relying on that transition game being something that we could pretty much count on and adding another level of forechecking to it. The forecheck is like, this is the best way to put it. When you go in the ocean and you're down the shore, whether you go to Ocean City, Sea Isle, Avalon, Stone Harbor, whatever, Atlantic City, you go in the ocean and the surf is pretty big that day, right? And you go in and you get pounded by that first wave. Well, if there's not another wave coming behind it, no problem. You survive the first one, and then you regroup, and then eventually another one wave comes in. Okay, I'm good. It's not a problem until a set of waves comes in. One hits you, you get up. Oh, boom, boom, there's another one. Now I'm getting hit again. Boom, now I'm getting another one. Now I'm on my heels. That's the way you got to attack a team, in waves, in layers and in waves. What a strange anomaly that was, or whatever. But that's the way you got to attack. And the Flyers are not doing that. They're coming in one wave, and they're going out the other way. Tide's going out. And that's what's been happening. And they got to figure that part of the equation out immediately. All right, let's get to one email in this episode. And this comes from Jay Kirsch. He says, hey, Jason, as you and Bill accurately pointed out in today's episode, that was yesterday's episode, a lot of what we've seen in the first 12 games of the year seems to be a carryover from the dismal end of last season. It's not just that the team is losing, as even when they're winning, they're playing a mostly boring and visually unappealing style of hockey. He said, this is a terrible combination for a franchise that is desperately trying to inject life back into the fan base and puts butts in the seats at Wells Fargo Center. It's one thing to play an aesthetically unappealing style when your team is winning a lot, like those Devil teams from many years ago. He said, yet that's not what we're seeing with this team. Given that they both exceeded expectations and played consistently somewhat, if not entirely exciting style of hockey for the first 65 to 70 games last year, what is going on? I was really excited for this season, especially with Mishkov, and so far it's largely been a boring disappointment. I'm really curious of your overall take on my question, so thanks in advance for your thoughts. Keep up the great work as always, Jeff. Jeff, it hasn't been an aesthetically pleasing thing to watch. I talked about it last year when the transition game came in going, first of all, we weren't expecting it. And you go, oh my God, look at this team going up and down the ice in transition. This is wild, fast hockey, as Doc Emmerich called it, fire wagon hockey. And we weren't expecting it. And I think when you have that brand of hockey, players like playing that too. It's fun because it's up and back and it's wild and it's, very fast paced. Fans like watching it. You feel like something can happen at any moment. Yet we just haven't seen that this year. And again, I don't know how they just get back to playing that. I think that's easier said than done. Is Sean Walker the missing ingredient? Maybe he is. Can Emil Andre fill that role? Maybe he can. But the team's got to get back to, results are always aesthetically pleasing, even if they're not as aesthetically pleasing as what we saw in that first 65 games last year. But got to attack, though. Got to attack in waves. That's the first part. All right, it is Flyers and Canes tonight. Call us off for the Flyers. We'll break it down tomorrow on a brand new Flyers Daily.